Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's ISC Fireside webinar. We've got an amazing topic that has sparked a lot of interest from all of you. Our topic today is with more collaboration comes more phishing, and how cyber criminals are upping up their threat game in a big way. And let me tell you, they are really upping their game. And we're going to talk about that today with three great panelists. We've got DJ Goldsworthy, who's the Vice President of Security Operations for Threat Management at AFLAC. And we've got Dr. Yanesi F. Nunez, who's our Chief Information Security Officer at Jack Henry and Associates, and John Fokker, who's the Head of Threat Intelligence and Principal Engineer at Trellix. So we're excited about our panelists, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a second, just to go over a few things that we're going to be covering today with our agenda. First, I'm going to hear from each of our panelists a little bit about them. And then we're going to hear a little bit via John about Trellix. And we appreciate our partnership with Trellix and all the amazing things that they're doing out there. We'll jump into the heart of our panel discussions, and our Q&A session will conclude with that by 2:45. So we encourage each and every one of you, as you think about a question that you might have, is to enter that question in the Q&A chat window. That's specifically the Q&A chat window, not the regular chat window. And we'll answer as many questions as time allows. But I suspect there's going to be quite a few questions because this is such a real hot topic area. And I also just want to make mention that if viewers who watch this webinar to our completion today will be eligible to receive 1 CPE credit. So at the end of the webinar, please fill out the survey that appears and enter your CPE number, and we'll send you an email verification by tomorrow of the record of your attendance so that we can submit the credits, you can submit the credits, I should say, overall. So don't exit this webinar early or you'll miss out on this opportunity to get your CPEs and complete the survey by telling us what you think. So if you are sharing this on social media today, we encourage you to have hashtag ISC Fireside in your hashtag, and we'd love to see it out there in the world of social media. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Oh my gosh, what a killer panel that we have put together. I've been actually looking forward to this for several weeks once we assembled the topic and invited each of you to join us. So Yanesi, I'm going to start with you. Just introduce yourself, and you always have these fabulous blazers on, so this is a new look for you today, huh?
It is. So thank you very much, Marcy. I feel very honored to be with this esteemed panel for today's discussion. As Marcy mentioned, I'm Yanesi Nunez, Chief Information Security Officer at Jack Henry. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was at Wells Fargo. Prior to that, Citigroup. And phishing is one of those areas where the attackers continue to evolve each and every day. And frankly, looking forward to having a spirited discussion with my esteemed panelists as well. And the blazer, I got it special for you, Marcy, because I know how excited you get about us looking good and representing cybersecurity in the best way possible. Thanks.
Well, thank you. You are looking sharp. So it does not compare with my orange red top today. So I'm going to let you win the Fashionista prize for today. How's that sound? Well, DJ, we're going to be talking about phishing, but you just came back from ice fishing. So what a drastic change. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thawing out. And I feel a little underdressed now, but we'll have to make do with what we have. I've been in cybersecurity for probably longer than I care to admit. Coincidentally, I cut my teeth in managed security services, running research and development for Jack Henry and Associates managed security services division called Gladiator Technology. So I got a lot of experience with the vendor space and protecting over 1,000 U.S. financial institutions. So a lot of interesting things always going on there. I joined AFLAC around 7 years ago, and I'm running all the security operations, threat management. I am sort of all the operational aspects of security there at AFLAC.
Well, thanks for being with us. And John, tell us where you're located today, because I think it's awesome. And and introduce yourself. And also, when you do that, we'll transition and hear what's going on at Trellix for a second there.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Marcy, for having me on the call. I'm actually located or situated and living in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. So I'm probably the furthest away from all our entities, but we never know. I'm the head of threat intelligence at Trellix. I've been with the company for 5 years. As many of you know, it's a merger between McAfee Enterprise and FireEye, but we call it Trellix, so it's new. I run a team of specialists, from malware reversers to intelligence analysts, that work all over the globe 24/7. We have them situated in the US and all kinds of customers. We try to cater with intelligence. We try to help them answer difficult questions: who attacked me, or what do I need to worry about, all these things. And we do this within the Trellix Advanced Research Center. That's our labs or research center that we have, where there's really some top talent in the industry. And I'd say I can't really disclose what is going on soon, but there is some really cool news coming out from Trellix. You might see that in a week. I think it will hit the headline news. We're working on it in the background, so you might see something about that. But transitioning into Trellix, Trellix is an XDR company. We're one of the market leaders in this realm, and XDR stands for Extended Detection and Response. We're having a little bit different approach when you compare it to our industry peers or our competitors. For us, it's very central that we work with our customers. We try to solve their problems. We're not fear mongers, even though I earn my money and I spend my days either talking to criminals, monitoring criminals, or looking at nation state attacks. We try to do that stuff so our customers don't have to worry. We are a large vendor, so we have a very large variety of products, but we're very strong in the endpoint, the EDR, email protection, which is very relevant for our current webinar, and many other things: data protection, DLP, and also threat intelligence. But that's my own wheelhouse. I can make a little advertisement for myself. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to talk shop about one of the threat predictions that we made.
Well, perfect segue, John, for what we're about to kick off, because what we're going to talk about first is really the weaponization of the commonly used apps that we have out there and all these communication services. And the Trellix Advanced Threat Center is really predicted some of the weaponization, of these types of phishing attacks. And I just was completely, I don't want to say flabbergasted, but I was just, the ingenious nature of them and the sophistication overall was pretty, they're always one step ahead of us. Okay. So we're on Zoom right now, but we use Microsoft Teams and Google Docs and Slack, all in a given working day. And so this is how critical it is for us to stay connected and work together. I mean, you're in the Netherlands right now, I'm in Atlanta. We're distributed out there across the board. So these collaboration apps, these services are not going anywhere, but they're just going to get more and more sophisticated and more of a necessity, overall for us as we do our jobs. So DJ, I'm going to start with you. With the growing sophistication out there of these threats and this weaponization that's really happening across the board, is it really easy to see why we're so vulnerable to all this and a whole new kind of spawning of types of phishing attacks from, okay, we're going to get all of our marine life here going. We're going to have spear fishing and whaling and smishing and fishing and angling. And you just came back from ice fishing. So that could be a whole new one for all we know out there. But so many of us being trained with the baselining of this, where do we start? Because I mean, when I tried to explain sometimes to family members what I do, I get this glazed look, but when there's a problem, they're like, oh my God, I have to call her, what's going on? So where do we start?
Yeah, gosh, we could spend the whole time on this, so I'll try to give the couple-minute answer. And we do need to coin ice fishing, so I'll think about that and come back to you on that one. Yeah, I think it's important, usually, the conversations around security awareness training, and that's absolutely, continues to be sort of the front line, getting your employees operational security up so that they understand the different types of attacks and threats that might be coming their way. And in this sense, it's hard to be specific because it's evolving and there's so many new platforms every day, different apps, different methods. During the pandemic, we saw threat actors targeting Zoom and Zoom accounts and pretending to be people within the company leading meetings to gather information. We know they're using machine learning to gather open source information on people and companies, and then making highly tailored, targeted attacks through a wide range of mediums. So what we really have to get across to our employees, our constituents, is that if the communication comes from behind a keyboard, then you have to treat it as a potential risk. And usually something like a good acronym helps them remember, what to do, how to assess it. SLAM is a common one, which is sender, links, attachments, message. And looking at those things, anytime there's communications. And I like replacing sender with solicited. Was it solicited or not? My favorite is the communication lame. Lame is links, attachments, message, and expected ? So was this communication expected? Are they asking me something that I didn't solicit? In which case, don't click links, don't open attachments, don't ever send sensitive information over those digital channels. And just really trying to keep it simple as we can for them. But then, of course, battle testing them with real world scenarios. Have your security operations folks who are on the front line and seeing these specific types of attacks, simulate them, have them do really engaging training so they've got that experience and it becomes a little bit more muscle memory. Now, I'll close out by saying two more things. What we can do, security has a role in this outside of training, of course, which is, making sure we're using, the better technologies out there today to secure our communications, email securities, using more and more machine learning and baselining behaviors and getting more advanced at detecting things that used to be really hard to detect because they were very nuanced. Machine learning can detect some nuance. So look at those types of solutions. And then I like, zero trust as a consideration as well. People are not going to be impervious to attack. Somebody will click a link at some point, more than likely. We have to shrink our blast radius, and things like zero trust can really help limit the impact if somebody does, fall victim to one of these types of attacks.
Yeah, no, I think that's a.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
no, I was
Marcy.
going to say how the digital domain is really a part of everybody's life, and maybe we could talk a little bit to how these attackers just have so many different types of threat vectors and with goals in mind, but and a little bit about how AI might be able to help us too.
Yeah, so I think reacting a bit to DJ's discourse there, I can say that when I think about protecting ourselves around phishing, we have to sort of bring it down to its rawest form, which is frankly anything that we leverage or use technology processes for is open game for attackers, for adversaries. So the way that I try to separate the personal from the technology component is to remove the illusion of knowledge around why attackers are coming after it. And they have the capabilities that they have are just the same ones that we get from a process benefit standpoint. And what we're seeing over the last 15, 20 years in this space is that for every new advancement in our capabilities, well, there's a new vector for attackers to come after, whether that's phishing, smishing, vishing, you call it the smorgasbord of ishing activities that are taking place, anywhere from business email compromise to account takeover. Are these attackers, again, leveraging a business process improvement? In our current era right now, you're seeing a lot of these train, transform AIs that are being actively used also to create more components of attacks for our users. So how do you turn their day-to-day and the susceptibility for their day-to-day processes, and then what technologies and tools can you use in place to prevent and protect them. Frankly, what really concerns me is the speed at which these attacks continue to happen, specifically concern around deep fakes. Now we can have our voices can be replicated within 3 seconds of hearing your intonation. So that if someone's recording this right now and they have one of these capabilities in place, they can replicate my voice. Now people are going to start, instead of getting text messages or emails, they're going to start getting voice messages that sound just like me, instruct them to do an activity. Very closely, we're going to start having video messages in place, whereby someone may think they're getting a FaceTime call from me, and the attacker will be able to respond in real time with my face and with my voice. So the speed in which these attacks continue to evolve and the maturity and what the capabilities are going to be even more drastic than what we're seeing today. And again, to one of DJ's points there is that we have to attack this problem from both ends. I feel that people are still and will always be our first line of defense today. A lot of controls are based on people. So make sure that those continue to be there. Can you verify that DJ is who we say he is, that John's who we say he is, and that I'm really a customer and I'm really sending an invoice to them? So there's so many ways of doing that. And I feel that we need to start thinking about the problem, the root cause of the problem, of the process. And once people get in tune with what the problem is, then it starts making a lot more sense that your CEO really doesn't want you, whether he left you a voice message or you think you talk to him or her, or she sends you an instruction and wire some money. Is that part of the process? No exceptions. So I think that that's one way of kicking things off.
Well, this is really stunning, at the end of the day, the sophistication and the very rapid evolution of it. So John, how do we disable our services? But that's going to cripple our operations, or, our security teams can only be so responsive to these kinds of threats and threat vectors. How do we stay ahead of this and tackle it? This is, insane, actually.
Yeah, kind of to echo my other panelists, it's you have to embrace technology, because technology will allow you to advance further. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that every new advancement comes with its flaws. And it usually are the criminals that are the first ones to point out where the flaws are. So we embrace something new, like, hey, the whole world had to step into Zoom with COVID. Well, guess what? Zoom wasn't protected or up to snuff at that time. So they had to backtrack and fix things. So that's always the case. And teams have a difficult task. And the other thing that I would like to echo as well is, like, yes, every employee is the first line of defense. They can make a difference. But what we see in our real life, and I hope my panelists can agree to this, is that a lot of the security teams are overwhelmed. They do get a lot of alerts. They do get alert fatigue. They do have a variety of tools, but not something that's consolidating and that can filter the signal through the noise. And if I look, like, some basic stuff that I've done when I ran a red team as well, it's like a lot of the outside in pen test management, pen test attack surface management type of engagements. Security teams scan across your collaboration tools for any sensitive data, because guess what? We can try to keep everybody out, but once they're in, we need to make sure that they not have all the keys to the kingdom. We've seen examples where ransomware actors were actually in the network, were using the collaboration tools, but because they had the valid accounts, and you could see the incident response team trying to discuss the situation, and they were just listening in on Slack. So that's things that we need to be aware of. So that ties into a lot of multi-factor authentication. You can think about data loss protection and all these things. So there's multiple ways of combining things together. But it is important to have empower your security team, that they don't get overwhelmed, but they do understand, like, okay, this is the signal in the noise.
So John, you bring up a great point. It's really about the willpower of these individuals, these bad actors and the cyber criminals that are out there. I want to mention to our audience that there's an FBI IC3 report, and we're going to put that in the chat window, where the FBI is tracking a lot of these types of attacks, from cryptomining malware and payouts of ransomware overall, in the whole aspect of BEC, business email compromise out there. So I want to kind of go back to you, John, because you brought up some good points. In the threat report out there, you talked about, actually in a press release recently, you talked about these political events, these global political events, on the adoption of the new technology that we're here, and the novel threats from these threat actors. So with business email compromise completely on the rise overall, what are these? I know we're sort of speculating what these attacks could look like, but is there a way for us to kind of thwart some of this, and or is it just, another form of phishing?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up IC3, because I've been reading the reports as well, and as a former law enforcement official as well. Business email compromise there's more loss in business email compromise than ransomware, for instance. So we can argue if it's sophisticated or not, but I come from the thing, like, if a criminal gets away with that amount of money, it could be a simple scam, but they're successful, right? And you can argue if it's a marketing term or a phishing term, but it is geared towards things, and these groups have refined their tradecraft. So they're not only sending out emails to trick you to click on a link. No, their tradecraft comes in the engagement phase, into the person-to-person type of relationship, to fool you into transferring funds, doing something that you weren't planned to do in your own in your right mindset. And actually, if you want to know what these attacks look like, I can give you a heads up. On the 22nd, we're launching our next quarterly threat report, and I have some data here because I've been writing it. I got some statistics if it's interesting as well. So email impersonation trends, that's what we monitor with some of the tools. We have like an email platform where we can see this. And guess what? 82% of all the CEO fraud emails that we detected were sent through free email services. So if we go back to that acronym SLAM, that is one of the things you can see. It's like, why would the CEO email from a Yahoo account? Why? That's not the regular business model. So you can poke through that. Then 87% of all business email compromise attacks were using common CEO phrases. Well, I have the top 10, so you can write them down, right? Or not, the top CEO phrases, not 10. I have to do some quick counting. Number one, I need you to carry out this task or a task for me immediately. So there's always a sense of urgency. I need you to get a task done, so kindly forward me your cell phone number. They transfer to an alternative means, and maybe they have that voice changing capability that we spoke about earlier. Send me your phone number. You need to get something done for me right now. Please send me your cell number and keep an eye out for my text. I need a task completed. Please review and confirm your cell phone number and keep a lookout for my text instructions. Oh, by the way, did you receive my previous email? I have a profitable deal for you. So these are very common openers. And what you would see is that they would try to transfer to a different mean that you would feel more trustworthy, and then they will engage. But it is rising. We saw in Q4 of 2022 that there was a 64% increase. So apparently criminals are getting away with it. And it's an easy email. It's an easy phone call. They keep you talking and they try to persuade you. So for them, it's relatively low investment with a high return. So criminals would pretty much always try to do this.
So, see, you've been very involved with organizations like ISAC and overall. So, where does the burden of defense fall upon, and how can we really, most importantly, overcome this? Because, people are very wanting to help people when they're asking for help, and it's unsuspecting, and it can be convincing. I've had one of these type of calls come in before, and I mistakenly answered the phone from a number that I thought was familiar, but it clearly wasn't. But they tried to do the shakedown, and I was kind of curious how they actually went about it. So I went along with it for a few minutes to kind of, see how one of these operate. But with that said, I'm aware because I'm in the industry, but your payroll clerk or somebody like that, your accounting clerk answers the phone, and they're getting a message from somebody that sounds legit that they have to pay this bill or make this payroll. So how do we overcome this?
So I would say that the same advantage that has the attackers having the upper hand, it's really helping benefit all of us. And what I mean by that is phishing, spamming has been so pervasive that now you get them on your personal phones, on your personal email. You're constantly, everyone's under constant attack with fake phone calls, right? How many folks here have received a voice message or a call to update your warranty on a vehicle you probably don't even own, right? So I think we're getting smarter about understanding how big the scammers and these processes are for them, that helps us then deliver our message. And to answer your question around collaboration, we have to think about this from two perspectives, right? There's the personal one, which again, we're getting bombarded with phishing, smishing, etc., in our personal lives. By the same token, that's happening in our professional lives as well. So as much as we can tie the two together for an informed, defense-driven culture, we can help people understand sort of why is it so important for them to be aware of these types of attacks and what they're trying to get out from them. As it pertains to protection, the onus obviously is for you to understand your environment. Each organization is different, the way they do business is different. Understand what are the right ways of protecting your environment. By the same token, we need to all share information and be able to collaborate, because together we're stronger. The attackers share information all the time. You mentioned FS-ISAC, great area. There are multiple different ISACs out there for almost every vertical, I think nowadays, where all information is being shared by those participants. And we find that it's very helpful to be able to know what the new tactics and techniques are, so that then we can apply them to our businesses and better protect our environment. So I feel that we've done a really good job in collaborating, but it's the onus of an organization to understand really what their processes look like and how they can help protect themselves, because the attacks are going to continue. And what also needs to continue is the collaboration and information sharing.
So DJ, let's just sort of talk about this here and how we sort of change some of these mindsets and empower maybe our organizations to go from the attack detection aspects to really thinking about it from a perspective of threat prevention, where we're maybe analyzing some of this in real time, perhaps even predicting it, and even ultimately preventing it.
Yeah, sure. So I think as an industry and a profession, we're already progressing in that direction to an extent. I would say similar to the way that we're shifting from gas vehicles to electric, on our way as a stepping stone to maybe something even more efficient and abundant. I think we're seeing that similar evolution in cybersecurity. So I think it's important to adopt a mindset of resiliency versus detection and response, and to kind of make that switch and make that transition. We're sort of at that point in time where we're hiring skill sets in cybersecurity that are more geared towards scripting and automation. So employing things like security orchestration and automation. Our vendor partners are implementing more inline automation using machine learning. So as an industry, we're kind of pushing that stuff more towards being adaptive, as opposed to detection and then having the SOC and incident response team go dig deeper on things. We certainly need to continue to embrace machine learning and encourage consolidation, within the cybersecurity space. We're starting to see our relationships with our partners shift from point solutions and tactical to being more strategic. Fewer security partners that are more strategic. They have more purview over the infrastructure to have more data to make more informed decisions. So XDR is a good example where you see that consolidation happening. I think it strengthens the industry because we as security teams struggle with 30 tools, 40 tools. How do you keep those integrated to work well enough to respond in real time accurately? We can't go shut down claims processing at Aflac, financial transactions at Jack Henry, right? That's not going to fly. So it has to be, efficient and calculated, and those integrations are key. So I think, we just encourage that innovation, and as professionals, we really try to drive those trends.
Well, it's really clear that there's just so many disparate events out there, and the whole aspect of AI and other types of predictive technology is really essential to correlating this, putting it together, so our threat analysts, our security analysts out there can really help us be much more proactive than reactive in looking at this whole landscape. We have so many questions that are popping in. So how about we just sort of jump over to those versus us just sort of bantering? Because I think everybody out there has got a couple questions for us today. How does that sound? We're going to jump over to our Q&A a little earlier. Our first question today is from Mike Mahan. Do you find users benefit more from having interactive guidance from all the chat bots within the browsers that, hold on, I'm putting my readers on because I need to see what I'm doing. The pop-ups tips such as this doesn't look like the official website, but entering your credentials may be risky, from the traditional phishing and awareness training. So, I mean, they've got it down. So who wants to sort of tackle that? John, I mean, this is sort of what you guys are really, looking at in your threat reports and things like that. Maybe you want to answer this question first.
So yeah, we don't have an interactive AI chatbot. A lot of the sites that are not legit, we do have some AI and ML technology on the back end for us to spot like, hey, this site is probably not legit, or there's something going on and you might want to hold off on putting something personal or your credit card details in here. But we will alert the customer through our solution about this. So you will get an alert and you'll be told like, well, there's something not right with this. So we would advise you not to do it. And actually, if we actually have more reasons to believe that the site has a malintent or is malicious, we will block that site automatically already in our solution. So we say like, hey, that you have no reason to be here. Don't go here because it will cost you money, or you will lose something.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Does anyone want to add to that, or should I just go ahead and jump ahead?
Yeah, no, I think that to add to that is that it takes a multi-pronged approach. Obviously, be as armed as you can be within your toolkit and your tool set, but frankly, leveraging secure browsers, and I don't mean going and getting it off an additional browser, but configuring your browsers to prevent these types of attacks. I would say it's the 80-20, right? They're not going to cover all the different vectors of attack, but they'll cover 80% to it, and that's a leg up. And then you layer additional protections, as John mentioned, to really get that complete. But I find that there's a lot that you can do today with secure offerings within browsers that you've identified are the ones you want to use for your organization. One thing to keep in mind is that the internet, specifically internet browsing, is meant to be open. So you're not going to be 100% quote unquote secure. If you use a browser by default, you're going to be insecure, but it's making sure that you are within the guardrails of sanctioned sites that are known not to be malicious. That's really when the rubber meets the road, is that anyone that tells you differently, they're lying to you.
I agree with you, completely. We've got a comment sort of question from Mark Kellerman. He said this is more of a comment, but when it comes down to the biggest and weakest link, it's the people and their security awareness. And this is certainly getting better as the security awareness messages are getting out there. And I would add to that, COVID kind of threw a lot of us off on, or of our end user community off with different types of messages that they received during that. And then the awareness picked back up. But these are opportunities for client side exploits when someone clicks on that link and gets the connection back to the bad guy. And this is a great discussion, so thanks for having it. But, you know, Mark, you bring up a really great point, because what we saw when we had a shift literally to work from home, all of us during when we were, you know, shut down, what I saw was just, you know, all these emails started to come through about COVID and aware, you know, things like that. So we were clicking on things that were completely different because we were in our home offices, at our kitchen tables, in our bedrooms, and outside the office, where we had been so diligent about, like, don't click on this, don't click on this, report it to your, you know, the security department that this looks like a fraudulent email. So now we're sort of in this quandary, I think, out there where we're all sitting at our, I think, our home offices today. And we all work for, you know, different companies out there, and we're listening to this in a myriad of different ways. So our ability to, an education level has to be kind of re-engineered and rethought across the board. While these folks are, you know, getting, well, these threat actors, I should say, are getting more sophisticated. So as Eric Green just says out there, it's meaning it's coming. It's not coming, it's here right now. And, you know, he also adds FIDO2, password list, part of what you mean with John with regards to MFA and Okta. So you want to sort of talk what Eric's sort of referencing here, that all this is here. He is right. You know, we're seeing it front on and center. And, you know, it was just referenced. This is more lucrative. BEC is way more lucrative than ransomware, you know, and you don't have to shut down an entire company and steal all their, you know, data. You just have to compromise one person during, you know, a group chat somewhere.
Yeah, but I would say that both of these types of attacks are, at the end of the day, crimes of opportunity, right? So if an attacker has an opportunity to use business email compromise to exfiltrate money, they're going to do that. It used to be that ransomware was the last step in their process of the attacker's toolkit. What they're finding out now, that right now that's their first step, because we have an environment that actually is very not only persuasive but really enticing to attackers, because most places have insurance, and what do they know? Insurance pays. Number two, you can transfer money very easily, leveraging any sort of cryptocurrency that's out there. So I would say that they're both crimes of opportunity that have similar types of vectors, and the attackers are going to take whatever the lowest hanging fruit is to exfiltrate money from your environment. So that's there. So I think to Eric's point around education, awareness, and training is we need to be transparent with our users, right, and with our sometimes our customers too, that some of these types of attacks, they're the ones that are actually happening, right? So true click rate for phishing, so that's one level of metrics. But there's also phishing that's sanctioned, right? That's the one that you're using to test your users. So make sure that you're transparent with your constituents about what those are, because then that will drive whether it's an education effort that needs to be done, or is it a technology tool process effort that needs to be done. Those are two distinct problems, and you'll find that the populations for the real click rate, which I think it's important for people to understand, that will tell you what susceptibility and what type of controls you need to have around that. So it's ever evolving, but I would say that the pandemic actually made us better, because it forces us now to really think about the phone call we get, the email that we're receiving, is it really true? And what I've seen personally is that I see they're scrutinizing messages more than ever before, because of everything that's ongoing, because of how much money is being pilfered by these attackers through the many different vectors. And I feel like as an organization and an industry, we're doing better because the problem is right in our faces.
Well, we've got a comment from Eric Green, and then I want to get Chris Korea's comment in or question. So classic Tom Cruise deep fake is a great example of what this is already here. And he's got a link to a YouTube video to Yanesi's point. So how we're all preparing for this. So we'll have to take a look at that YouTube video. But going on to Chris's, I want to capture that link. To Chris's point, we also are dealing with attacks via social media platforms, and that's a great point. What advice or capabilities do you have here, given the corporation's limited ability to put security controls in this space? And you know what, that is a whole nother, this might be our next one that we can tackle, because so many people play with these apps out there and, you know, give all this information across the board. So what are you thinking about that, you guys?
Yeah, I had like personally, like there's a couple of ways to approach it. You have like more work-related social media like LinkedIn, and obviously you have like Instagram. Funny story, 2 weeks ago, my sister called me. Her son was a victim of sextortion through Instagram. So he accepted somebody in their friend accepted, and that person created a fake picture with his photo, an obscene picture, and send that to all his contacts, and they wanted money. And that's like the simple thing that we can deal with in our personal life. But from a business perspective, yes, social media is definitely playing a role. And I think 2 years ago, we uncovered a North Korean, we attributed to Lazarus, APT campaign that was predominantly targeting their victims through LinkedIn. So they created a fake profile, they engaged with the person, they tried to, they were actually impersonating a recruitment firm that they were trying to, like, hey, we have an interesting position with you. And if you're a professional, and everybody gets approached by headhunters on LinkedIn and they always get some offers, and then it's like, hey, or I have this profile of this candidate, it always happens. And that was a PDF file that was malicious. And that was the first step in. And it worked out really well. Similar thing we saw with a Chinese APT actor called Mustang Panda. They were interested in the telecom situation around 5G and ripping out some other products. So they were targeting specifically telco sectors that were in the news, that they were contemplating changing their backbone environments to different providers. And they did the similar thing. They posed as a recruiter. They were targeting specific individuals, and it wasn't HR or somebody working in accounting. No, it was a sysadmin. It were all the technical folk. And that's actually funny, because often when we talk about phishing, we portray ourselves that we have the person working in HR clicking on a link. Well, guess what? If I look at the ransomware cases we do, most of the times it's the sysadmin. Because the sysadmin has all the rights and he's not as diligent sometimes with his things, and he gets targeted and they got the keys to the kingdom. It happens. So it can happen. If it can happen to one person, it can happen to anyone. So everybody needs to be aware about that stuff.
Well, gentlemen, this 45 minutes pretty much went by in a nanosecond. I don't know how about you guys, but we probably could talk about this for a couple more hours. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for sharing your thoughts about this really very interesting topic area that definitely is deserving of more exploratory in future ISC Fireside webinars together. And I know we're about to go on some ISC private dinners together as well. So continuing this conversation topic, we've, really excited about all the questions that were out there today that came in as well. So I think we're on to something, and keep up the great work over there at Trellix with all the advanced threat research reports that you are doing and issuing out there. You're making our lives a lot better and safer across the board. And we appreciate our partnership with Trellix. We've got a whole bunch of things happening. So we're back. We're back. So we've got a lot of events across the board, whether ISC private dinners, ISC Fireside webinars, and we have the ISC Summit and Awards. We'll be back here in the ATL on May 4, 2023, and we'll be at the beautiful Whitley Hotel. Nominations are open, and we're thrilled to celebrate the ISC, the security executives and project teams. And I'm pleased to share with you guys that ISE Awards is 20 years old this year. So I'm, that's why I'm going blonde versus gray across the board. And he has no hair. It's all good. So just kidding.
I used to have an afro, and look what's happened.
There you
to all my
go.
years
There you
back.
go. But we're so excited to be celebrating 20 years of all the great work that you're doing out there. So let's make sure that we're continuing that momentum, and join us on May 4th, but get your project and your security executive nominations in sooner than later, because it's all going to hit us very quickly, because RSA is coming up as well. If you'd like to hear more about Trellix and what they've got going on, Donna Delgado is your lady. So she's a senior manager in field marketing with Trellix, and she can be reached at donna.delgado@trellix.com. And so reach out to her. Our next ISE Fireside webinar will be April 5th, 2023, and we'll be announcing our topic and speakers shortly. So do fill out your survey. We want to make sure that you get your CPE for joining us today. And we'd love, of course, your feedback. Thank you so much all for joining us, and enjoy your Thursday, because tomorrow's TGIF. So have a great afternoon, everybody.